when you ask this question of how many sets should I do in a workout, it's not the only question you should be asking. You should also be asking, how many reps am I going to do? How long am I going to rest in between sets? What exercises? What's my frequency? How many days off do I take in between hitting the muscle? These are probably all questions that you're asking yourself, right? So when you're trying to figure out the best way to structure your training, volume is just one of the factors. And the reason I make this point first is because the amount of sets that's going to support you in optimal muscle growth is going to depend on the training intensity, on the rep range, on the frequency, on the tempo, etc. So there isn't necessarily one fixed best amount of volume, in my opinion. And varying the volume while also adjusting the other parameters is going to allow you to stimulate the most muscle growth if you change these things from one period to the next instead of just doing the same thing. So instead of looking for, I want Matt or some scientific study to tell me the optimal number of sets to do, I think you should keep an open mind to trying different amounts of volume while also adjusting the other parameters. Okay, I'm going to give you a concrete example of my own training to hopefully make this make sense, because we're really rambling about a lot of stuff and it sounds very abstract. So over the past month and a half, I've been doing low volume training. And if you're familiar with the channel, you'll know that's not typically what I'm into. I've done some pretty excessively high amounts of volume in the past. What I wanted to do was focus on trying to get stronger in these two arm movements. And to do that, I don't necessarily want to do a ton of sets. I'm going to do a bunch of warm-up sets, and then the triceps extension behind the head, I'm chasing reps with heavy weight, worked up to getting the 122-pound dumbbell for 17 reps with a fast, explosive, not perfect tempo. If you've been watching my previous videos, you will have seen that. And then I'm resting a long period of time, like 5 minutes. And then I go do the same thing for biceps, 115 pounds, trying to get 17, 18, 19 reps. And then I rest another 5 minutes. That's one round. I'm going to repeat that round one more time. So I'm doing 2 heavy sets for the tris, 2 heavy sets for the bis. The key thing to note is that the rest time is extremely long. I hit the tris, I rest 5 minutes. I hit the bis, I rest 5 minutes. That's like 10 minutes of rest plus before I hit the triceps again. Same thing for the biceps. So you're allowing for an extended period of recovery, similar to how powerlifters train. That's why in my previous video, I was talking about how, a powerlifting-esque approach for arms where you use an extended rest time, you chase reps and weight, but you just use a higher rep range is kind of a similar perspective mentality to how powerlifters approach their, squat, bench, and deadlift, but obviously in the lower rep range. Now, that's a very small amount of volume. And I would go afterwards and do a bunch of pump it up stuff to finish off and blast myself into the freaking stratosphere with a sick, wicked, nasty pump of the pythons. If you're looking to get gigantic arms, check out the freaking arm program to swell up some girth monsters of your own. So the total net volume per muscle, per workout is probably like 5 to 8 sets total is what I would estimate it in. I would consider that like relatively low volume. And then now, what the footage you're seeing here in this session, the perspective has shifted where I'm not going to chase reps and weight as much. I'm still going to keep it in my mind. I'm still going to keep, my foundation of progressive overload over time is probably going to be the primary mechanism that gives me growth. So I'm not going to abandon that completely, but I'm going to de-emphasize it a little bit. I'm going to slow down the tempo. So now I'm using the 107-pound dumbbell and we're getting 9 to 13 reps, which the numbers are a lot less because when you slow down and add more control, you're always going to be a little bit weaker in terms of the output that you can get and how much you can move the weight. And I'm going to use a bit of a shorter rest time, like 3 to 4 minutes instead of 5. And I'm going to do more sets. I'm going to do like 5 rounds of this instead of 2. That's what I did today. And then we move on to some drop sets, pump it up, finisher stuff, which I would estimate this workout's, net standard amount of sets, because a drop set's a bit hard to measure how many like exact single sets that would be, is going to be like 8 to 10 sets total. So it's a little bit higher. And what you can see though is that I'm changing some of the other parameters. I'm changing the rest time. I'm changing the tempo to increase the volume. And I'm changing my perspective to kind of shift a little bit away from like a powerlifting progressive overload approach to a little bit more like bodybuilding. It's a little bit more about control and pump, and I care a little bit less about the numbers. I'm still considering them and trying to get more, but the sole purpose of my workout isn't just to go in there and try to get one additional rep with the same weight that I got last time to track that progress. And the reason that I want to lay out these 2 different styles of training is to show you that I don't think it's as important to have like one fixed set of volume that you always do. And it's going to be more beneficial to do something for like 1 to 2 months with X amount of volume, with a certain amount of intensity, a certain amount of rest time, a certain amount of rep range, like that cocktail combining to stimulate your muscle growth. And then like 2 months later, transition into something else where you go, okay, now I'm going to bump up the volume. But to do that, I'm going to add more sets in. I'm going to have to, maybe drop my rest time down a little bit. I'm going to, in my case, adjust the tempo, go a little bit slower. Let's focus a bit more on control and mind-muscle connection. And I'm going to get a few more sets in. And maybe the rep range drops a little bit, whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be exactly like that. But the point that I'm trying to illustrate to you is that adjusting your volume, periodically, like once every couple months, where you're doing like a lot of low volume and then you switch to high volume and then maybe you switch to medium volume, is going to be more effective than trying to hone in on one exact number of sets. And when you change the volume, the other parameters are going to adjust as well. And when you think about your training like this, where you're trying to concoct this cocktail that's going to stimulate muscle growth and you're moving these little dials around, that's how you should, kind of think about your training as you go. And to let go of the idea that you're going to come up with the one fixed single best cocktail. I've done this so many times myself where you go, I've got it. Like even this past like month or two where I was like, oh, I'm back to like chasing reps and, the weight's going up again. And like, this is it. I love this kind of training. I'm taking pre-workout again. I'm going to stick with this. But then like a month or two in, the benefit from it, if it is an effective training structure, and if you go and push with high intensity and are consistent, most reasonable training structures will be effective. Some are going to be slightly more effective than others. I think my ARM program helps to, allow you to weed out the things that definitely don't work that I've seen through my personal experience and kind of focus on structures that I've seen to consistently be a bit more effective. But at the end of the day, if you're consistent and you have some reasonable, training structure, you're going to be able to make progress. But the thing that's going to limit you is to stick with that exact same structure for like years, which most people do. And I've done myself, because you see progress in the beginning and then you become biased to this type of training structure. And you like go, oh, like low reps build more muscle, or oh, like long rest times are more important, or oh, like a slow tempo leads to more gains. And you get stuck there, or, this amount of sets. And so anytime you ask these questions, you need to be flexible with your mentality so that you can go, okay, I'm going to try lower volume for a bit, and that's going to allow me to prioritize, chasing reps and weight within each individual set. And then after a couple months of that, or a month or whatever, I'm going to switch into higher volume, but I'm also going to change maybe the intensity level, maybe the tempo, maybe the frequency, how often I hit the muscle, the rest time in between, the rep range. So the point, I'm really rambling, but the point I'm trying to get across is that the answer is that generally speaking, I do think more volume is better, but the problem you're going to run into is recovery. And also like your recovery is not unlimited. And I've messed around with some extremely high volume workouts, and initially it seems like adding sets and continuing to add sets as your form of progression does lead to more growth, but then eventually your body's capability to recover, is going to get in the way, and you're going to start to, maybe break down or induce extreme amounts of chronic fatigue, and the muscle growth is going to not be as effective over the long term because it's probably not sustainable, the amount of work you're doing, if you're doing extremely high volume. But that what's probably more valuable is to be flexible with the amount of sets that you do and change it from time to time, and realize that there's pros and cons to low volume and high volume. And the reason I'm not like, high volume is better and you should stay with 20 sets per workout is because you give up the ability. Like, for example, if you're only going to do high volume, your intensity level in each set is going to be sacrificed. If you have to go in there and do 20 sets of back, like the last, 15 sets after the first 5, the intensity level simply is not going to be as high. Whereas if you went in there and you're like, I'm going to do 3 sets all out, the intensity level is going to be extremely high. So there's pros and cons to both approaches. And what I would say is going to be the most effective is to do both periodically. Phases of high volume, phases of low volume, phases of medium volume, where you adjust the other parameters in there. I've seen that to carry more value than trying to find the one fixed best answer. It's the kind of novelty stimulus of changing and adjusting things as you go. Given that, you're trying to cultivate some form of progression in your training, and that you're moving more weight for more reps or more sets over time, and you're always going to all your sessions, you're super consistent, and you push extremely hard, give it everything you've got, you're better off to adjust the volume, adjust the rep range, adjust the tempo, adjust the rest times in between your sets as you go, rather than fixating on one specific training structure. So I know that was a big ramble all over the place. I'm trying to condense it down and make as much sense as it can, because it is a very like theoretical, like, is high volume or low volume better? It's not like high volume, video over. This is like a whole ramp. I'm trying to get that across so that you can absorb that and think about it yourself and be like, oh, okay, I get it. I shouldn't waste any more time fixating on high volume. I should just pick amount of volume that works for me, whether it's 4 sets, 12 sets, 20 sets, just settle on it and realize that there's trade-offs and pay attention to how my body responds to how these different parameters also adjust when I change the volume. So, and if you're looking for like a specific structure that kind of lays all this out for you, my ARM program is very effective in doing that for you, so that as you go, as you go through the months, it changes the structure for you. So if you're like, oh God, like Matt's talking about all these different parameters and shit, it doesn't really make sense. I feel overwhelmed. I don't know what to do when I go in there. It's really not that complex. But if you need help, where it's like, yeah, I just want to have something that tells me, how many sets, what rep range, what rest time to do for this month or 2 months. The program is set up like that. And then every, month or couple months, it changes, because that's what I've seen to be the most important, or like one of the most important impactful things, is that you have to keep evolving your training in some way, shape, or form, so that you don't just keep doing the exact same thing over time. I don't think optimal in terms of volume or a lot of these parameters really exists. I think different things are, optimal or most effective at different times. And then you need to look at it as a dynamic, evolving process, where if you want your body to continue to grow, you need to continue to expand and grow your perspective or your training approach. It's my freaking 2 cents as a maniac on the internet trying to friggin' supersize his girth monster. So if you're looking for a sick, wicked set of nasty pipe Datarinos, check out the ARM program. I do think it will help you. What else? Oh, my goal to get down to 205. We had a new weigh-in today, 219, 1 pound down, baby. We're on pace. I got to lose a pound every 2 days. So 2 days in, we lost 1 pound. Could just be because I took a bigger shit. Who knows? But either way, I'm going to get on that scale every day that I'm in the gym and track, and that's the pace that we're trying to hit. So a little update there. Thanks for watching. Go out there and make some freaking gains. Have a great day. Peace.